I discovered through a casual Instagram story that my entire family celebrated my father's 65th birthday at Romano's Italian Bistro without me. The devastating text from my mother claiming it was last minute, just close family felt like a knife twist when I saw my sister Emma posting photos with 23 family members, including my manipulative ex-boyfriend Marcus, who somehow surprised them there. The calculated exclusion became crystal clear when I noticed my empty chair visible in one photo's background, proving this was planned all along. Everything I believed about my family was wrong. The fluorescent lights in my Denver marketing office buzzed overhead as I stared at my computer screen, fingers cramped from typing campaign proposals for Mountain Peak outdoor gear. It was 8:30 on a Friday evening, and the building had emptied hours ago, leaving me alone with the hum of servers and the distant traffic from 16th Street below. I had been working 16-hour days for 3 weeks straight, launching the biggest campaign of my career for a client whose hiking boots needed to compete with industry giants. My phone sat silent beside my ergonomic keyboard, its black screen reflecting the blue glow of spreadsheet cells filled with demographic data and conversion metrics. I needed a 5-minute break before diving into the final presentation deck that would determine whether Mountain Peak signed their annual contract renewal. Coffee sounded perfect. Walking to the break room, I grabbed my phone out of habit, the way everyone does when they need to fill those tiny gaps of mental downtime. I opened Instagram while waiting for the coffee maker to finish its gurgling cycle, mindlessly scrolling through the usual mix of workout videos, vacation photos, and food pictures that filled my feed. Then I saw it. Emma's Instagram story appeared at the top of my screen, a bright circle indicating fresh content. My sister rarely posted anything beyond motivational quotes and pictures of her weekend brunches, so curiosity made me tap her profile photo. The first image showed the familiar red brick exterior of Romano's Italian Bistro, with its hand-painted wooden sign and the small herb garden that Mama Romano tended every morning. Golden light spilled from the large windows, and I could see the warm glow of the dining room where my family had celebrated every major milestone for the past 15 years. But it was the second photo that made my blood freeze. There, gathered around our usual corner table, sat my entire family. Dad occupied the head of the table, wearing his favorite navy sweater and that genuine smile he reserved for truly happy moments. Uncle Robert stood behind him with a hand on Dad's shoulder, while Aunt Patricia raised a glass of red wine in a toast. Cousin Jake had his arm around his new wife, Michelle, both of them laughing at something someone had said. Grandmother Betty sat in her wheelchair at the table's side, her silver hair perfectly styled, and her hands folded over the small purse she took everywhere. Emma beamed from her seat, holding up what looked like a slice of tiramisu with a single candle flickering on top. And there, sitting exactly where I always sat during family gatherings, was Marcus. My ex-boyfriend wore a crisp navy button-down shirt and dark jeans, his brown hair styled the way I used to love running my fingers through. His arm draped casually over the back of Emma's chair, as if he belonged there, as if he had never broken my heart 8 months ago by cheating with his coworker. The coffee mug slipped from my hands, ceramic shattering against the break room's linoleum floor, as hot liquid splashed across my shoes. The sound echoed through the empty office like a gunshot. "Elizabeth? You okay in there?" My coworker Janet called from the hallway, where she was apparently working late too. "Fine," I managed to croak, staring at my phone screen as if the images might change if I looked hard enough. Just dropped my cup. But I was not fine. I was drowning in confusion and hurt that felt like physical pain spreading through my chest. I took a screenshot of Emma's story, my hands trembling as I navigated back to my text messages. There, sent just 3 hours earlier, was a message from my mother. "Sorry, honey. Last-minute dinner for Dad. Just close family tonight. We'll celebrate with you next weekend. Last minute. Just close family." I counted the people in Emma's photo again. 23 family members sat around tables that had clearly been pushed together to accommodate the large group. This was not a small, intimate gathering. This was the kind of celebration that required advanced planning, reservations, and coordination with Romanos to arrange seating for nearly 24 people. My fingers moved across my phone screen with desperate urgency, checking for missed calls or text messages that might explain this impossible situation. Had I somehow missed an invitation? Was there a family emergency that required this sudden gathering? Nothing. No missed calls. No additional text messages. No voicemails waiting for my attention. I called Emma immediately, pacing the break room while her phone rang 4 times before going to voicemail. "Hey, it's Emma. Leave me a message and I'll get back to you soon." The cheerful tone of her recorded voice made my stomach clench with nausea. I tried calling again. Same result. My mother's phone went straight to voicemail without even ringing, suggesting she had either turned it off or was deliberately declining my calls. But it was when I enlarged Emma's photo and examined it more closely that I spotted the detail that changed everything. In the background, partially visible behind Uncle Robert's broad shoulders, I could see the edge of another chair, an empty chair with a place setting, a chair positioned exactly where I would have sat if I had been included in this celebration. The silverware was arranged. The napkin was folded. The water glass was full. Someone had set a place for me at that table, which meant this gathering had been planned far enough in advance for the restaurant to prepare proper seating arrangements. You do not call Romano's 3 hours before dinner and arrange seating for 24 people. Their reservations book weeks in advance, especially for large family parties on Friday evenings. I screenshotted that detail too, zooming in until I could clearly see the prepared place setting that would have been mine. Standing in that empty break room, surrounded by coffee-stained ceramic shards and the buzz of fluorescent lighting, I realized that my family had not forgotten to invite me to my father's birthday dinner. They had deliberately chosen to exclude me, and somehow, inexplicably, my ex-boyfriend Marcus had taken my place at the table where I should have been celebrating the man who taught me to ride a bicycle, helped me with calculus homework, and walked me down the aisle at my college graduation. 20 minutes later, I sat in my Honda Accord in the office parking garage, my hands gripping the steering wheel as I tried to process what felt like a complete betrayal of everything I thought I knew about my family relationships. The concrete walls around me seemed to close in, amplifying the sound of my ragged breathing and the distant echo of traffic from the street above. I activated my car's Bluetooth system and called Emma again, determined to get answers this time. She picked up on the second ring, her voice slightly breathless and filled with the background noise of restaurant conversation and clinking glasses. "Elizabeth, what's up?" The casual tone of her greeting felt like a slap across my face. "What's up?" As if she had not just posted photographic evidence of the most hurtful family exclusion I had ever experienced. "I saw your Instagram story," I said, keeping my voice as level as possible despite the rage building in my chest. "Dad's birthday dinner at Romano's." A pause. Then Emma's voice returned, but the carefree tone had vanished, replaced by something guarded and defensive. "Oh, that. Yeah, it really was last minute, just like Mom said. Dad mentioned wanting Italian food, and you know how he gets about Romano's, so we figured we'd surprise him." "Last minute," I repeated slowly. "Emma, there are 23 people in that photo. Romano's does not accommodate parties that size without advance reservations." "Well, we got lucky, I guess. They had a cancellation." The lie came so smoothly that I wondered how long she had been practicing it. My sister, who used to tell me everything, was sitting in our father's birthday celebration, crafting excuses for why his other daughter was not there. And Marcus just happened to show up? Another pause, longer this time. I could hear her moving, probably stepping away from the table to continue this conversation without the rest of the family overhearing. "He's in town visiting friends. When he heard about Dad's dinner, he wanted to stop by and say hello. You know how Dad always liked him." The casual way she mentioned my ex-boyfriend's presence made my hands clench around the steering wheel. Marcus lived in Chicago, 4 hours away. He did not make spontaneous trips to Denver to say hello to my father, especially not when we had been broken up for 8 months. "Did anyone suggest inviting me when Marcus showed up?" I asked. "Elizabeth, you're being dramatic. There will be other birthdays. We'll do something special for you and Dad next weekend. Okay?" Dramatic. The word hung in the air between us like an accusation. According to my sister, wanting to celebrate my father's 65th birthday was dramatic. Feeling hurt about being excluded from a major family gathering was dramatic. "I can see an empty chair in your photo, Emma. There's a place setting. Someone planned for me to be there." "I don't know what you're talking about," she said quickly. Too quickly. Look, I should get back to the table. Dad's about to cut his cake. The line went dead before I could respond. I immediately called my father's cell phone, my heart racing as it rang once, twice, 3 times. When he answered, his voice was warm and filled with the contentment that comes from being surrounded by people who love you. Elizabeth, sweetheart, how are you? I was just thinking about you. The background noise confirmed he was still at the restaurant, and I could hear the familiar sounds of Romano's busy dining room. Conversation, laughter, the clink of silverware against plates. Dad, I just found out about your birthday dinner. I'm so sorry I missed it. Missed it? His voice shifted, confusion, replacing the earlier warmth. What do you mean? Your mother said you were working late and could not make it tonight. My mother had lied to him. She had told my father that I was too busy with work to attend his birthday celebration, making me look like the selfish daughter who prioritized her career over family. Dad, nobody invited me. I found out about it from Emma's Instagram. The silence that followed was heavy with his growing understanding. My father was not a stupid man. He ran a successful construction business for 30 years by reading people carefully and recognizing when something was not right. That doesn't make sense, honey. Hold on. I heard him excuse himself from the table, his voice becoming clearer as he moved to a quieter area of the restaurant. Elizabeth, I need to ask you something, and I want you to tell me the truth. Did your mother or Emma contact you about tonight? The only text I got was 3 hours ago, saying it was last minute and just close family. Last minute. He repeated the words with the same skepticism I had felt. Honey, your mother made these reservations 3 weeks ago. She spent days coordinating with everyone to make sure they could attend. This was not last minute. Relief flooded through me. My father had not been part of the deception. He thought I had been invited and chosen not to come. Dad, I would never miss your birthday by choice. You know that. I know, sweetheart. I know. His voice carried a heaviness that suggested he was beginning to understand the scope of what had happened. Let me sort this out with your mother. There's obviously been some kind of miscommunication. But even as he said it, we both knew there had been no miscommunication. There had been a deliberate choice to exclude me, followed by lies to cover up that choice. I'll call you tomorrow, he said. We'll figure this out. After we hung up, I sat in the parking garage for another 10 minutes, trying to organize my thoughts and emotions into something coherent. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. Stop being dramatic. There will be other birthdays. Some things are more important than your hurt feelings right now. The dismissive tone made my chest tighten with anger. My hurt feelings? As if being excluded from my father's milestone birthday was a minor inconvenience rather than a devastating betrayal. But it was the phrase, "some things are more important," that stuck in my mind as I drove home through Denver's Friday night traffic. What could possibly be more important than including me in my father's birthday celebration? Unless there was something happening at that dinner that my family specifically did not want me to witness. Something involving Marcus, whose presence at the table made no logical sense unless he was there for a reason that had nothing to do with my father's birthday. I pulled into my apartment complex and sat in my assigned parking space, staring up at the third-floor window where my living room light glowed warmly. Inside that apartment was my life. As Elizabeth, the marketing manager, the responsible daughter who worked hard and paid her bills on time and visited her family every other Sunday for dinner. But apparently, that Elizabeth was not welcome at important family celebrations anymore, and I had no idea why. The weekend passed in a haze of sleepless nights and obsessive analysis of every family interaction from the past 6 months. I sat at my kitchen table Saturday morning, laptop open, creating a timeline of recent family gatherings and trying to identify patterns in who was invited and who was excluded. Sunday dinner at my parents' house 3 weeks ago. Everyone invited, including me. Emma's birthday party last month. Everyone invited, including me. Uncle Robert's retirement celebration in August. Everyone invited, including me. But as I dug deeper into my memory, I began to notice smaller exclusions. Coffee dates between my mother and Emma that I learned about through casual mentions. Shopping trips that happened without invitations extended my way. A family book club that Emma mentioned in passing, as if I already knew about it. I had been gradually pushed to the periphery of family social activities, but so subtly that I had not recognized the pattern until now. Sunday evening, I called in sick for Monday, something I had not done in over 2 years. I needed time to think, to process, and to figure out how to address this situation without damaging relationships that might still be salvageable. Monday morning, I sat at my home desk with a cup of coffee and opened my laptop to catch up on personal emails I had neglected during my work crisis. My personal Gmail account showed 47 unread messages, mostly promotional emails from stores and newsletters I never read. I was deleting them systematically when I noticed something odd in my spam folder. There was an email from my mother's account that had been automatically filtered, probably because it was forwarded multiple times or contained certain keywords that triggered spam detection. The subject line read, Elizabeth situation, planning discussion. My stomach dropped. I clicked on the email, and what I found destroyed any remaining hope that the birthday dinner exclusion had been an innocent mistake. The original message was sent from my mother's email address to Emma, dated 6 weeks earlier. I had been included as a blind carbon copy, probably due to some glitch with our shared family cloud storage system that automatically copied certain emails to all family members. Emma, the email began, we need to finalize our timeline for gradually transitioning Elizabeth out of family gatherings. The birthday dinner will be the perfect test case, and having Marcus there will serve multiple purposes. I read that sentence 3 times before my brain could process its meaning. My mother and sister had been planning to exclude me from family events. This was not a spontaneous decision or a misunderstanding. This was a calculated campaign. The email continued. As we discussed, Elizabeth's inheritance from Grandpa Joe could become problematic if she maintains her current level of family involvement. The trust fund stipulates that beneficiaries must be active and engaged family members, but it also allows for redistribution if someone becomes estranged or unfit for family participation. My grandfather had died 2 years ago, leaving me a trust fund worth approximately $200,000 that I could access on my 30th birthday, still 14 months away. I had always assumed the money would simply be there when I needed it, perhaps for a house down payment or starting my own business. Apparently, my mother and sister had other plans. The key is documenting Elizabeth's absence from important family events, the email went on. If we can establish a pattern of her choosing work over family, choosing her own interests over family obligations, we can build a case that she has voluntarily distanced herself from us. Marcus's presence at the birthday dinner will serve as evidence that we tried to include people important to her, but she chose not to participate. I stared at that paragraph until the words blurred together. They were not just excluding me from the birthday dinner. They were using my exclusion as evidence that I was excluding myself. But the next section of the email was what made my hands start shaking. The other issue we need to address is Elizabeth's access to Dad's business accounts. Since she's listed as an emergency contact and backup signer, she has the ability to review financial records if she ever becomes suspicious about anything. We need to be more careful about the monthly transfers until we can figure out how to remove her access without Dad noticing. Monthly transfers. My father owned Bradley Construction, a successful company that built custom homes throughout the Denver metro area. He had been generous with family members over the years, helping pay for college tuitions and emergency expenses, but he was also extremely careful about business finances. If my mother was making unauthorized monthly transfers from his business accounts, that was theft. And if I was the only family member with the knowledge and access to discover this theft, then removing me from family activities was not just about my inheritance. It was about covering up a crime. The final paragraph of the email was the most chilling. Remember, Elizabeth has always been too trusting and emotional to handle family business decisions effectively. By Christmas, we should have enough documentation of her instability and absence to petition for guardianship considerations if Dad's health becomes an issue. The memory problems he's been having lately could work in our favor if we need to demonstrate his vulnerability to Elizabeth's influence. My father did not have memory problems. He was sharp, focused, and entirely capable of managing his own affairs. But if my mother could create a narrative of his declining mental capacity, combined with evidence of my supposed abandonment of family responsibilities, she could potentially gain control over his business and assets. I printed the email and read it again on paper, hoping that seeing it in a different format might make it seem less devastating. It did not. My mother and sister had been plotting for months to steal my inheritance, frame me as an unreliable daughter, and position themselves to take advantage of any future vulnerability my father might experience. The birthday dinner was not the beginning of their campaign against me. It was just the most visible step in a plan that had been unfolding for weeks. And I had been completely, naively unaware that the two people I trusted most in the world were actively working to destroy my relationship with my family. I spent Monday afternoon in a state of controlled fury, printing documents and organizing evidence like I was preparing for the most important presentation of my life, because in many ways I was. My laptop screen glowed with bank statements, email threads, and family photos that now took on sinister new meanings. Every casual conversation, every canceled plan, every small exclusion from the past 6 months suddenly fit into a larger pattern of manipulation that left me feeling sick and betrayed. At 2:30, I called Sarah Chen, my former supervisor, who had become both a mentor and friend since I left her marketing team to join my current firm. Sarah had 20 years of experience in corporate investigation and forensic accounting, skills she had developed while working for a company that specialized in uncovering financial fraud. "Elizabeth," she answered on the first ring. "This is a surprise. How are you holding up after that Mountain Peak campaign launch?" "Sarah, I need advice about something personal, and I need someone I trust completely." Her tone shifted immediately, becoming more focused and professional. "What's going on?" I explained the situation carefully, starting with the birthday dinner exclusion and building up to the email discovery. Sarah listened without interrupting, occasionally asking clarifying questions about dates and financial details. "Have you verified the information about unauthorized transfers?" she asked when I finished. "I have access to Dad's business accounts as an emergency contact. I can see the monthly statements, but I was afraid to look too closely in case there are logs of who accesses what information." Smart thinking. "Elizabeth, if what you're describing is accurate, your mother has been committing felony theft. The amount you're talking about, spread over several months, could result in serious prison time." The reality of that statement hit me like a physical blow. My mother could go to jail for this. My family could be destroyed completely. What should I do? Document everything first, before you confront anyone. Print the bank statements that show unauthorized transfers. Get copies of any other relevant financial information. And, Elizabeth? Sarah paused. "Be very careful about who you trust with this information. If your mother is desperate enough to steal from your father and manipulate your family relationships, there's no telling what she might do if she feels cornered." After we hung up, I spent 2 hours carefully accessing my father's business account information through the emergency contact portal. What I found was worse than I had imagined. Over the past 8 months, someone had been making monthly transfers of between $8,000 and $12,000 from Bradley Construction's operating account to a personal account belonging to my mother. The transfers were always made on different days of the month, and they were labeled with vague descriptions like family expenses and household maintenance. But my father paid my mother a generous monthly allowance for household expenses through their joint personal account. These business transfers were in addition to that allowance, and they were clearly unauthorized because they were not being reported to the company's accountant or included in quarterly tax preparations. The total amount stolen was $73,000. I printed every relevant document, creating a file that clearly showed the pattern of theft and the attempts to hide it within normal business transactions. Then I called my father. "Dad, are you free for lunch tomorrow? I need to talk to you about something important." "Of course. Honey, is everything okay? You sound stressed." I chose my words carefully, knowing that this conversation would change our family permanently. "I found some information about family finances that I think you need to see. Can we meet somewhere private? How about Riverside Cafe? That little place on Cherry Creek where we used to go when you were in high school." "Perfect. Noon? I'll be there." After confirming our lunch meeting, I spent the rest of Monday evening preparing for what felt like the most important conversation of my life. I organized the documents chronologically, highlighted the most significant evidence, and practiced explaining complex financial information in terms my father could easily understand. But even as I prepared to expose my mother's crimes, I discovered something that made the situation infinitely more urgent. While reviewing my father's business calendar through the shared family Google account, I found an appointment scheduled for Thursday at 10 a.m. Meeting with Johnson and Associates regarding Elizabeth's situation. Johnson and Associates was the law firm that handled my father's estate planning and business legal matters. My mother had scheduled a meeting with his lawyers for 3 days from now, clearly planning to present her version of recent family events before I had a chance to tell my father what I had discovered. If Linda proceeded with that meeting, she could potentially poison my father's relationship with his attorneys, create legal documentation of my supposed instability, and lay the groundwork for challenging my mental competence or family involvement. I had less than 72 hours to expose her theft and manipulation before she took legal steps that could be much more difficult to reverse. Tuesday morning, I called in sick again and spent the early hours making copies of everything, storing duplicate sets of documents in my safe deposit box, and with Sarah Chen. If my mother was capable of theft and family manipulation, I could not rule out the possibility that she might try to destroy evidence or escalate her campaign against me. By 11:30, I was sitting in my car outside Riverside Cafe, watching my father's blue Ford pickup truck pull into the parking lot. He climbed out slowly, moving with the careful deliberation of a man whose 65 years had been spent doing physical labor, and I felt a wave of protective anger at the thought of my mother taking advantage of his trusting nature. This was the man who had taught me the value of honest work, fair dealing, and family loyalty. And the woman he had loved and trusted for 37 years of marriage was stealing from him while plotting to turn him against his daughter. I gathered my folder of evidence and walked toward the restaurant, knowing that the next hour would either save my family or destroy it completely. Riverside Cafe occupied a converted house from the 1920s, with small dining rooms that offered privacy for difficult conversations. My father and I sat in the back corner of the sunroom, surrounded by hanging plants and windows that looked out over Cherry Creek's walking path. He looked older than I remembered from just a week ago, with new lines around his eyes and a weariness that seemed to settle in his shoulders. His work-worn hands wrapped around his coffee cup as he studied my face with the careful attention he had always given to problems that needed solving. "You look like you did not sleep much last night," he said gently. "I didn't. Dad, what I need to show you is going to be difficult to hear, and it's going to change things in our family permanently." His expression grew more serious, but he nodded for me to continue. I opened the folder and placed the printed email on the table between us, watching his face as he read my mother's words about gradually excluding me from family gatherings and documenting my supposed instability. The change in his expression was immediate and heartbreaking. His eyebrows drew together in confusion, then his mouth tightened with growing anger as he absorbed the implications of what he was reading. "She wrote this?" he asked quietly. "6 weeks ago. I was accidentally copied because of our shared cloud storage." He read the email again, more slowly this time, and I could see him processing not just the words, but the calculated nature of the planning they revealed. "Elizabeth, I need you to understand something," he said finally. "I don't have memory problems. I've never shown signs of declining mental capacity. If your mother told Emma I was having memory issues, that was a lie designed to support whatever they were planning." Relief flooded through me. I had been afraid that there might be health concerns I was not aware of, but my father's clarity and focus confirmed what I had observed during our regular interactions. "There's more," I said, placing the bank statements on the table. I walked him through the unauthorized transfers systematically, pointing out the pattern of theft and the attempts to disguise the transactions as legitimate business expenses. His face grew paler as the scope of the financial betrayal became clear. $73,000, he said, staring at the highlighted totals. "Over 8 months. And Dad, she scheduled a meeting with Johnson and Associates for Thursday morning. I think she's planning to present her version of recent events before you find out what she's been doing." He was quiet for several minutes, studying the documents with the methodical attention he brought to construction blueprints and contract negotiations. I could see him reorganizing his understanding of recent months, recognizing conversations and incidents that now revealed their true purpose. The birthday dinner, he said. She insisted on making the reservations herself, said it would be a surprise for me. But she told me you were too busy with work to attend. I was never invited, Dad. And Marcus being there was not a coincidence. His phone buzzed with a text message, and he glanced at the screen with an expression that suggested he recognized the sender. It's your mother. She wants to know where I am and when I'll be home. Does she usually track your movements during the day? Not usually, no. He set the phone aside without responding to the message. Elizabeth, I want you to know that I'm proud of how you handled this situation. You could have confronted your mother directly, or tried to handle this secretly, but instead, you came to me with evidence and let me make my own decisions about what to do next. I felt tears starting to form in my eyes, the first genuine emotional release I had allowed myself since discovering the email. I was so afraid you would not believe me, or that you would think I was trying to cause trouble between you and Mom. Honey, your mother caused this trouble when she decided to steal from my business and manipulate our family relationships. You're not responsible for exposing her choices. His phone buzzed again, this time with a call from my mother. He declined the call, but it rang again immediately. Tom, where are you? My mother's voice was sharp with anxiety when he finally answered. Emma and I are at the house, and we need to talk to you about Elizabeth's behavior lately. My father's expression hardened. What about Elizabeth's behavior? She's been calling family members and making accusations, trying to cause problems. We're worried about her mental state. I could hear Emma's voice in the background, though I could not make out the words. Linda, I'm having lunch with Elizabeth right now, and her mental state seems perfectly clear. In fact, she's shown me some very interesting information about our family finances. The silence on the other end of the call was telling. What kind of information? My mother asked, her voice becoming more strained. The kind that explains why you've been so eager to exclude her from family gatherings. I'll be home in an hour, and we're going to have a conversation about $73,000 in unauthorized business transfers. He ended the call before she could respond. They're at the house right now, I said. They were planning to ambush you with their version of events. Well, now they'll have to explain their version of 8 months of theft instead. We sat in the cafe for another 20 minutes, discussing next steps and preparing for what would certainly be an explosive confrontation. My father called his accountant to request an emergency audit of all business accounts, and he contacted Johnson and Associates to cancel Thursday's meeting and request an immediate appointment to discuss potential criminal charges against my mother. Dad, are you sure you want to pursue criminal charges? Once you involve the police, there's no going back. He was quiet for a moment, staring out at the creek where families pushed strollers and walked dogs in the warm afternoon sunshine. Elizabeth, your mother has stolen enough money to buy a house. She's manipulated family relationships for months to cover up her crime. She's scheduled meetings with my lawyers to discuss having you declared unstable. If I don't pursue charges, I'm telling her that she can steal from our family and destroy our relationships without consequences. What about Emma? Do you think she knew about the money? I hope not. But even if she didn't know about the theft, she knew about the plan to exclude you from family gatherings. She was actively participating in hurting you to support your mother's agenda. As we prepared to leave the cafe, my father placed a hand on my shoulder. Elizabeth, I need to apologize for not protecting you from this situation. I should have recognized what was happening sooner. Dad, they were very careful to hide it from you. The whole plan depended on you not knowing what they were doing. Still, I should have noticed that my daughter was being excluded from family events. I should have questioned why someone who has never missed a birthday or holiday suddenly became too busy to attend important gatherings. We drove separately to my parents' house, my father in his pickup truck, and me following behind in my Honda. As we turned into the familiar driveway where I had learned to ride a bicycle and taken prom photos, I wondered if this might be the last time I ever visited the house where I grew up. The confrontation that was about to happen would either restore my place in our family or destroy any possibility of future relationships with my mother and sister. But as I sat in my car for a moment before walking to the front door, I realized that I was no longer afraid of losing people who had already chosen to betray me. I was angry. The front door of my childhood home stood open, revealing the familiar entryway where my mother had always hung a seasonal wreath and my father kept his construction boots on a small wooden bench. But today, the welcoming atmosphere felt charged with tension as my parents' voices carried from the kitchen in sharp, urgent tones. My father walked through the door first, moving with the purposeful stride of a man who had made difficult decisions and intended to follow through on them. I followed close behind, my folder of evidence clutched against my chest like armor. "Tom, thank God you're here," my mother's voice called from the kitchen. Elizabeth has been exactly where she should be," my father interrupted, his voice carrying an authority I rarely heard outside of his construction sites. "She's been protecting this family from theft and manipulation." My mother and Emma appeared in the kitchen doorway, both of them dressed carefully as if they had prepared for an important meeting. My mother wore her navy blazer and pearls, the outfit she reserved for church and formal occasions. Emma had chosen a soft pink sweater and dark jeans, looking young and vulnerable in a way that seemed calculated. "Dad, Mom told me Elizabeth has been making wild accusations," Emma began, her voice trembling with what appeared to be genuine distress. "She's claiming that we deliberately excluded her from your birthday dinner, and now she's saying Mom stole money from your business." The concern in Emma's voice seemed authentic, and for a moment I wondered if my sister truly did not know about the financial theft. But then I remembered the email that specifically mentioned coordinating with Emma about excluding me from family events. "Emma, did you help Mom plan to exclude me from Dad's birthday celebration?" I asked directly. "We didn't exclude you," she protested. "It really was last minute, and we knew you were busy with that big work project." My father set his copy of the printed email on the kitchen counter where everyone could see it. "This email was sent 6 weeks ago," he said calmly. "It specifically discusses planning to exclude Elizabeth from family gatherings and documents her absence for legal purposes." Emma's face went white as she recognized my mother's words in print. Her eyes moved quickly across the page, and I could see the exact moment when she realized the scope of what had been planned. "Mom," she whispered, "you said this was just about helping Elizabeth focus on her career. You said, including her in fewer social activities would give her more time for work." "Emma, don't let her manipulate you," my mother said sharply. "Elizabeth printed fake emails to try to cause problems in our family. This is exactly the kind of unstable behavior we've been trying to address." But my father was already holding up the bank statements. "Linda, explain these unauthorized transfers from my business account to your personal account. $73,000 over 8 months. The kitchen fell completely silent, except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of a neighbor mowing their lawn. My mother's carefully composed expression cracked, revealing something desperate and cornered underneath. "Those were legitimate business expenses," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Household maintenance and family costs related to business entertainment. I pay you a household allowance through our joint personal account," my father replied. "These transfers were in addition to that allowance, and they were never reported to our accountant or included in tax preparations." Emma was staring at my mother with growing horror. "Mom, did you really take money from Dad's business without telling him?" "It's not stealing when it's from your own family," my mother snapped, her composure finally abandoning her completely. "I've contributed to building that business for 37 years. I deserve to benefit from its success." "By lying about it and hiding it?" I asked. "By manipulating family relationships to prevent Dad from discovering what you were doing?" My mother's face twisted with anger as she turned toward me. "This is all your fault, Elizabeth. If you had just minded your own business and focused on your own life, instead of interfering with family decisions, none of this would have happened. Elizabeth interfered with your crime," my father said coldly, "and I'm grateful she did." The sound of a car door slamming in the driveway interrupted our confrontation, and through the kitchen window, I could see Marcus walking up the front path. "What is he doing here?" I demanded. Emma's face flushed with embarrassment. "I called him when Dad said he was coming home early. I thought you might try to cause trouble, and Marcus offered to help mediate the situation." My ex-boyfriend walked through the front door without knocking, moving with the confident familiarity of someone who belonged in the space. He had changed from the navy shirt he wore to the birthday dinner into a gray polo and khakis, but his presence still felt like a violation of the home where we had shared 3 years of holidays and family celebrations. "Elizabeth," he said with a smile that looked sympathetic, but felt condescending. "I heard you've been having a rough time lately. Family stress can be really overwhelming. Marcus, you need to leave," my father said firmly. "This is a private family matter." "I understand your concern, Tom, but Linda asked me to be here to help keep things calm. Elizabeth can get pretty emotional when she feels like people are working against her." The patronizing tone of his voice made my hands clench into fists. During our relationship, Marcus had frequently dismissed my concerns as emotional overreactions, and hearing him use the same tactics now felt like being slapped. "The only thing I'm emotional about is discovering that my mother has been stealing from my father while planning to contest my inheritance," I said clearly. "Would you like to see the evidence?" I placed the bank statements on the kitchen counter next to the email, spreading them out so Marcus could see the highlighted transactions. "Marcus, get out of our house," my father said, his voice carrying the unmistakable tone of a man who would not repeat himself. But Marcus was studying the documents with an expression that seemed less surprised than it should have been. "These look pretty bad, Linda," he said casually, as if he was discussing a minor accounting error rather than months of felony theft. That casual familiarity with my mother's name, combined with his lack of surprise at the evidence, created a terrible realization. "You already knew," I said slowly. "You knew about the money." Marcus shrugged, abandoning any pretense of being an innocent bystander. "Emma needed help figuring out how to handle the family situation. Your mom's financial stress was affecting everyone. Emma asked you to help plan my exclusion from family events? We thought some space might help you gain perspective on what's really important," Emma said defensively. "You've been so focused on work and your own life that you've lost touch with what the family needs." I stared at my sister, trying to reconcile this manipulative stranger with the person who had been my closest friend for 26 years. "What the family needed was protection from theft," I said. "What the family needed was honesty, instead of manipulation." My father moved to the kitchen phone and began dialing. "Who are you calling?" my mother asked, her voice rising with panic. "Johnson and Associates, to schedule an emergency meeting, and then the police to report the theft of $73,000 from my business account." "Tom, you can't," my mother pleaded. "Think about what this will do to our family, to my reputation. I'll pay the money back." "With what money, Linda? And how do I know this won't happen again?" The sound of my father dialing the police while my mother begged him to reconsider was surreal, like watching a television drama unfold in the kitchen where I had eaten thousands of family meals. But it was Marcus's next words that changed everything. "Tom, before you make any calls, you should know that Linda has been recording your conversations with Elizabeth for the past week. If you pursue criminal charges, those recordings could be used to demonstrate your vulnerability to manipulation." The kitchen went completely silent. My father slowly hung up the phone and turned to face my mother. "You've been recording my private conversations with my daughter? Just to document her attempts to turn you against me," my mother said desperately. "I was trying to protect our marriage." "Where are the recordings?" "On my phone and laptop." "But Tom, you need to understand," my father held out his hand. "Give me your phone." "I can't do that." "You can, and you will. Or I will call the police right now and let them seize it as evidence." With shaking hands, my mother handed over her iPhone. My father immediately began scrolling through her recent recordings, his face growing darker with each discovery. But I had learned enough about technology during my marketing career to know that recordings could be uploaded to cloud storage or shared via email. If my mother was desperate enough to record private conversations, she was certainly planning to use those recordings as weapons. "Dad, can I borrow your phone for a minute?" While my mother watched in horror, I accessed her iCloud account using the family shared password and began deleting every recording she had made. Then I forwarded copies of all her emails to my own account before permanently deleting them from her sent folder. "You can't destroy my property," she protested. "I can delete recordings that were made illegally without consent," I replied, continuing to work through her digital files. "And I can preserve evidence of your theft and manipulation for law enforcement." Marcus stepped forward as if to physically stop me, but my father moved between us. "You need to leave my house immediately. my father told Marcus. "And you are never welcome here again." "Emma asked me to be here," Marcus protested. My father looked at Emma, who was crying quietly in the corner of the kitchen. "Emma, do you want Marcus involved in our family business?" Through her tears, Emma shook her head. "I just wanted Elizabeth to understand how much stress Mom has been under. I didn't know about the money, and I didn't know about recording conversations. It was the first completely honest thing my sister had said since I arrived." 3 months later, I sat in the same corner booth at Riverside Cafe where my father and I had shared the conversation that changed everything. But this time, the atmosphere was completely different. Sunlight streamed through the windows, casting warm patterns across a table set for 4 people instead of the desperate 2 who had met here to discuss family betrayal. My father arrived first, moving with renewed energy that made him seem years younger than the exhausted man who had discovered his wife's theft in this same restaurant. Behind him walked Emma, carrying a small wrapped gift and wearing an expression of nervous hope that had become familiar over the past few months. "How was therapy this week?" I asked Emma as she slid into the booth across from me. "Hard, but helpful," she replied honestly. "Dr. Martinez is helping me understand how I let Mom manipulate my perception of family relationships. I'm beginning to see how many lies I accepted, without questioning them." The changes in Emma were subtle, but significant. She spoke more carefully now, thinking before she reacted, and she had developed the habit of asking direct questions instead of accepting explanations that did not make complete sense. Individual therapy was helping her recognize manipulation tactics, but the real work was happening in our weekly family dinners where we practiced honest communication. "Elizabeth, I brought you something," Emma said, placing the wrapped package on the table. "It's not much, but I wanted you to have it." Inside the gift wrap was a framed photograph from my high school graduation, showing Emma and me with our arms around each other, both of us laughing at something my father had said while taking the picture. It was the kind of genuine moment that had defined our relationship before manipulation and lies had poisoned our family dynamic. "I found it in my college photo album," Emma explained. "I wanted to remember what our relationship looked like before I let Mom convince me that you were trying to hurt our family." The past 3 months had been a journey of careful reconciliation between Emma and me. She had genuinely not known about the financial theft, but she had known about the plans to exclude me from family gatherings, and she had participated in those plans because my mother had convinced her that I was becoming selfish and disconnected from family values. Our father arrived at our table carrying his usual coffee and wearing the satisfied expression of a man whose business was thriving under renewed attention and improved financial oversight. "How are the new security protocols working out?" I asked. "Excellent. Having you review the monthly statements and co-sign any transfers over $500 gives me complete confidence in our financial management. The accountant says our books have never been cleaner." The Bradley construction business had not only survived the financial theft, but had grown stronger with improved oversight and transparency. My father had promoted his most trusted foreman to assistant manager, and they were considering expanding into commercial construction projects. More importantly, my father had gained a deeper understanding of how financial vulnerability could be exploited by people who seemed trustworthy, and he had implemented systems that would prevent future theft regardless of who might attempt it. "Any word from Mom's lawyer about the plea negotiations?" Emma asked quietly. "She's going to accept the prosecutor's offer," Dad replied. 18 months in minimum security prison, followed by 3 years of supervised probation and full restitution of the stolen money plus interest. The criminal case against my mother had proceeded quickly once the evidence was presented to law enforcement. The unauthorized transfers were clearly documented, and her emails provided proof of intent to defraud and manipulate family relationships for financial gain. Linda Bradley would spend the next 18 months at a minimum security facility in Colorado Springs, followed by probation that would require her to maintain steady employment and submit to regular financial oversight. She would also be required to pay $73,000 plus interest to my father's business account. The divorce proceedings had been finalized 6 weeks ago, with my father retaining the family home, his business, and all retirement accounts. My mother would receive spousal support for 2 years after her release from prison, but nothing more. "I got the letter from Grandpa Joe's trust administrator," I said, pulling an official envelope from my purse. They've reviewed all the family documentation and confirmed that none of Mom's claims about my estrangement have any merit. The trust fund will be available when I turn 30 as originally planned. Are you still thinking about using it for a house down payment? Emma asked. Actually, I've been considering a different option. I looked at both of them carefully, making sure they were prepared for what I was about to suggest. I'm thinking about using part of the money to start my own marketing firm, and I'd like to offer Dad a partnership in the business development side. My father's eyebrows rose with interest. What kind of partnership? Bradley Construction has grown large enough that you need professional marketing and business development services. Instead of hiring an outside firm, we could create Bradley Marketing as a subsidiary company. I'd handle all your advertising, client development, and brand management, and we could also take on other construction companies as clients. The idea had been developing in my mind for weeks, but I had waited until our family relationships were stable before suggesting a business partnership that would require long-term trust and cooperation. Elizabeth, that sounds like an excellent opportunity for both of us, my father said. I've been thinking about hiring a marketing manager anyway, and working with you would give me complete confidence in the quality and integrity of the services. Emma had been listening to our business discussion with an expression that seemed wistful rather than excluded. Emma, I was also hoping you might consider coming back to Denver, I said. I know you're happy with your job in Phoenix, but if I'm starting a marketing firm, I'm going to need someone to handle administrative operations and client relations. You've always been excellent with people, and I think you'd be perfect for managing the business side while I focus on creative and strategic work. The job offer was genuine, but it was also an opportunity to rebuild our relationship through shared professional goals rather than just family obligation. You'd want me to work with you after everything that happened? Emma, I want you to work with me because of everything that happened. We've both learned how to recognize manipulation and prioritize honest communication. Those are exactly the skills needed to build a trustworthy business. The waitress approached our table to take our lunch orders, and as we discussed sandwiches and salads, I marveled at how normal this conversation felt. 3 months ago, I had believed my family relationships were permanently destroyed, but careful rebuilding had created something stronger than what we had lost. The healing process had not been easy or quick. Emma had needed individual therapy to understand how she had been manipulated, and our father had worked with a counselor to process his feelings of betrayal and guilt about not protecting me from my mother's schemes. I had also spent time in therapy, learning to trust my perceptions and set healthy boundaries with people who might try to manipulate me in the future. But the most important element of our recovery had been our commitment to absolute honesty, even when the truth was uncomfortable or inconvenient. I have something to tell you both, Emma said as our food arrived. I've been in contact with Marcus. My father and I both looked at her with alarm, but she held up her hand to indicate she had more to explain. He called me last week asking if our family had resolved our financial drama and whether I thought there might be opportunities for him to rebuild relationships with everyone. When I told him that Elizabeth and I were working together to start a business, he suggested that he could be helpful with investors or business connections. What did you tell him? I asked. I told him that anyone who would exploit family problems for personal advantage was not someone we wanted in our business or our family. Then I blocked his number. The relief I felt at Emma's response was profound. Her ability to recognize and reject Marcus's manipulation attempts demonstrated real growth and understanding of healthy relationship boundaries. I'm proud of you for handling that situation so directly, my father said to Emma. It shows you're developing good judgment about people's motivations. Our conversation was interrupted by the arrival of David Chen, Sarah's younger brother, and the accountant who had helped my father restructure his business financial systems. I had been dating David for 6 weeks, and his presence at our family lunch represented another positive change in my life. Sorry I'm late, David said, sliding into the booth next to me. I had a client call that ran longer than expected. David possessed all the qualities that Marcus had lacked: genuine integrity, professional competence, and respect for my independence and decision-making abilities. He had been incredibly supportive during the difficult months of family crisis, offering practical help without trying to control my choices or dismiss my concerns. "How did the meeting with the bank go?" my father asked David. "Excellent. They're very interested in providing startup funding for Bradley Marketing, especially with your construction business as the anchor client. Elizabeth's business plan is extremely thorough and professional." The conversation moved to practical details about business licenses, office space, and equipment purchases. As we discussed timelines and budgets, I felt a deep sense of satisfaction at how completely my life had changed since that devastating Friday evening when I discovered my exclusion from my father's birthday celebration. The woman who had sat in an empty office parking garage 8 months ago, trying to understand why her family had betrayed her, had been replaced by someone who understood her own worth and refused to accept manipulation or dishonesty from anyone. "There's one more thing I want to discuss with both of you," I said as we finished our meal. "I think we should establish a tradition of monthly family meetings where we discuss any concerns or issues openly before they become problems. Like business meetings, but for family relationships?" Emma asked. "Exactly. We'll review how everyone is feeling about family dynamics, address any concerns immediately, and make sure we're all communicating honestly about important decisions." The idea had come from my therapist, who had pointed out that many family problems develop because people avoid difficult conversations until small issues become major crises. "I think that's an excellent idea," my father said. "If we had been having those conversations 8 months ago, your mother's manipulation might have been recognized and addressed before it became so destructive." As we prepared to leave the restaurant, Emma handed me another small package. "What's this?" "It's the spare key to Mom's storage unit. I thought you might want to check whether she kept anything there that belongs to you or Dad." I had not known my mother rented a storage unit, but it made sense that someone planning financial theft and family manipulation might want to keep certain items hidden from discovery. "Did you check what's in there?" I looked briefly, but I thought you should decide what to do with the contents. That afternoon, the three of us drove to a storage facility on the outskirts of Denver, where we discovered that my mother had been preparing for much more than simple financial theft. The storage unit contained boxes of family photographs, with my image carefully removed from many of them, legal documents related to challenging my grandfather's trust fund, printed copies of my social media posts, with notes about potential evidence of irresponsibility or poor judgment. But most disturbing were the financial records showing that she had been planning this campaign for over a year, gradually building a case for my exclusion from family inheritance, while systematically stealing money to fund her efforts. "She was going to try to erase me from the family completely," I said, holding up a box of photographs where my face had been cut out of group pictures. "But she failed," my father said firmly. "And instead of destroying your place in our family, her actions helped us build stronger relationships based on honesty and trust." That evening, we burned the manipulated photographs in my father's fireplace, while keeping the original images of genuine family memories. The legal documents went to my father's attorney as evidence of additional manipulation attempts, and the financial records were turned over to the prosecutor handling my mother's criminal case. Watching those destructive materials turn to ash felt like a ritual purification, clearing away the last remnants of manipulation and dishonesty that had poisoned our family relationships. 6 months later, I stood in the office space that would house Bradley Marketing, surrounded by moving boxes and the excited energy of a new business venture. Emma would arrive from Phoenix next week to begin her new role as operations manager, and my father had already scheduled our first major client meetings for the following month. David walked in carrying coffee and a folder of finalized bank loan documents. "Congratulations," he said, kissing my cheek gently. "You are now the official owner of a small business with excellent growth potential and a very supportive family behind you." The journey from family betrayal to business ownership had been longer and more difficult than anything I had ever experienced, but it had taught me lessons about my own strength and the importance of surrounding myself with people who valued honesty and integrity. I thought about that devastating evening 8 months ago, when I had sat in an empty office, staring at Instagram photos of a family celebration that had excluded me. That woman had felt powerless and confused, unable to understand why the people she loved most had chosen to hurt her. But that exclusion had led to discoveries that saved my father from financial exploitation and taught our family how to communicate with genuine honesty. It had ended relationships that were based on manipulation and created space for relationships built on mutual respect and authentic care. Sometimes being excluded from the wrong table leads you to build your own. Better one where authentic love and respect are the only requirements for belonging. The birthday dinner that had seemed like my family's rejection had actually been my invitation to create the life I truly wanted, surrounded by people who valued my presence and celebrated my success. And that was the greatest gift my father could have ever received, even though it came wrapped in the most painful betrayal we had ever experienced. Have you ever experienced a moment when what felt like rejection actually led you toward something better? Sometimes the most painful exclusions become the most powerful redirections in our lives. If this story resonated with you, please share your own experiences in the comments below. Your story might help someone else recognize their own strength during difficult family situations. And if you enjoyed this story, please like this video, subscribe for more real-life stories about overcoming family challenges, and share this with anyone who might need to hear that they are strong enough to handle whatever comes their way. Thank you for listening, and remember that your worth is never determined by who chooses to include or exclude you from their table.